Okay, they're all in. Now what I normally do, and this isn't something you guys have to do, spin the engine around, make sure nothing binds, make sure there's no hard spots. If there is, something's not right. And then I flip the motor upside down, and we're going to start to assemble the upper oil pan. So, next step, torque all your rod bearing caps. So we're going to go ahead and get the torque wrench out. We're going to get these all torqued down properly. Then we're going to install the upper oil pan, then everything that comes along with that. So let's get into this. All right, so on this application, it's not going to be the factory torque. I did look up the factory torque for you guys. It is 22 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees, similar to what we did on the mains. So these have very, very simple instructions. You can read through, you find out which one you have. I have the ARP 2000. I have 3/8 size in 1.5 inch, so 60 foot-pounds is what we're after. Now, the other thing this says is it absolutely has to be submerged in oil. So what I did, I'm pulling them out, soaking them in oil for like a second. You dip them in, make sure they're all gooped up with 30 weight oil. Start driving them back down. So right now I'm just snugging them. Snugging them down. We got the big boy right here. Does a phenomenal job. I know not everyone has digital, but if you don't, basically what you want to do is pull to the same amount of resistance back and forth between the two until you get to the point where you think you're close to the torque. Do it again, back and forth, then click, then click. What you don't want to do is drive one side way down and then drive the other side down. That's definitely a bad idea. So do not do that, but let's go ahead and get these torqued down, huh? The other thing I recommend doing is pulling one way or the other against the crank or against this way. I wouldn't recommend tugging this way or that way. What you'll do is you'll end up twisting the rod bearing. Okay, now I got 2 lights there, 2 lights there. Now we're going to get a little more aggressive. 3, 3. This is when you got to start to actually support the motor here. There we go. 60. Here we go again. 60. Now what I always do, especially if you got a click style, I always go back and make sure that the second time I pull, they're for sure torqued. That's just something I do, not something you guys have to do, but it is good habit. Well, she's all torqued down. Rotating assembly complete. All right, next up on the list, oil pump. We're actually on this one, we're putting in a brand new oil pump. This is an Aisin oil pump, not Asian, Aisin. This is the only aftermarket brand, personally, that I would recommend running. If you have a GE, make sure it's a GE oil pump. If you have a GTE, make sure it's a GTE. I'm not going to get into the science of oil pumps, but the operating pressure, okay, that's preset in the oil pump, has to be the same as what the block is designed for. If you put a GTE oil pump in a GE, it will overpressurize. You will not have fun. So This actually, if you look at it, has the mating surface for the lower oil pan. So this goes first, okay? There's some O-ring seals that are critical that you replace. Obviously, there's some residue on them I got to clean up, or debris, I guess I should say. So I'll be cleaning that up. Then we will be mating it, okay? Now you see these lines, okay? It gets an RTV seal all the way around it. I'm going to show you how to do that properly without, gooping it everywhere, but making sure that you get a good seal. Make sure it is absolutely spotless, just like you see there. And I'm going to clean it up even more because there's a little bit of residue here and there that we're going to clean up, and then we'll get her sealed onto the front of the motor. All right, so little thin layer around all the cutouts, nice and simple. Thicker layer around all the bolt holes. That's way thicker than I wanted it to be, but it'll be fine. Let's get her on there, get her sealed, and then we can get the upper oil pan on it. So, oil pump is on. Again, just the 2 O-rings, the RTV seal. Make sure the bolts are correct. Make sure you torque it down properly as well. Don't remember the torque specs off the top of my head. I actually did that last night. Install the rear main as well. RTV seal. Put a new rear main in every time. We're about to install this upper oil pan. So basically what you do is go around, hit RTV on all of those gaps. And then what I normally do, so I also put a layer on the block itself. And basically what I do is just tack it up around the inside edge. And the reason for that is there's no grooves around the bolt holes, if you look at that. So it does require more than just filling in the grooves on that upper oil pan. So basically I'm just going around, just making sure everything gets a good tack on it. If you look at this groove here, I'm going to need to come in and fill this with RTV. I missed that part. So I'm going to grab the RTV, fill this little groove in, as well as I'm going to dab it on the top of this. You want this to be the best seal on the motor because it's a freaking pain in the butt to replace. Well, that and the head gasket. So that's simple. All right, here's where we're at. So I changed my mind. I'm just going to post the torque specs as I go through the video. You'll see them prior to this comment on the bottom of the screen. But got the upper oil pan torqued, got the rear main torqued. At the same time, I torqued the oil pump as well. So we're getting ready to put the lower oil pan and the strainer in. Okay, so I want to touch on something. Make sure this is spotless before it goes in. And now that I'm looking at it, oh no, those are just little rust spots on it because I sprayed the living crap out of this thing, soaked it. You can't really get in the screen to clean it. You can pry this all up and try to get underneath it that way and then put it back together. I'm not going to do that. That's clean. It's just a little surface rust that's in there. Long story short, make sure you get a new gasket, okay, for this guy. Because if this starts to leak or starts to pull in air, okay, bad issues for the oil pump. So right here I got the brand new gasket for it. As you guys can see, it should have that little crush. Wow, can't talk. Should have the little crush section in it, as you see there. So just make sure that is the case. And then so we're gonna get that installed, get the strainer installed. And it does bolt up to this pan as well, so make sure you put that bolt in. And then with the strainer, there is what's called a windage tray. Obviously, as you can see, I'm going to need to clean this up, give it a good grind down, get it all nice and spotless. Last time this was wiped down was when it came out. But just for reference, and I'm going to do this gently, to my knowledge, you know what? I have it upside down. That's why. if I remember right, it sits just like that. And then this guy sits right here. So now you guys can kind of see how that's set up. Do not install it that dirty. Again, I'm going to clean it here, so I'm going to do that right now. We'll get the new gasket on there. And then this, again, not a gasket per se. It's going to be an RTV seal. We're going to seal that up, and then we're done. All right, so we got the windage tray on. It's all bolted down. Small little bolts. Doesn't take much torque to bolt that down. Don't overcrank them. As well as we got the strainer bolted in as well, bolted in on the backside. Make sure you don't miss that. I got the upper oil pan prepped. I got the RTV spread on it. So basically what I do, I'm not going to go over this completely, but you just goop it up around the bolt holes real good, smear it everywhere else. And then, where's the pan? Oh yeah. So the pan, I got a pretty fat layer on there as well. These pans tend to kind of get hot and kind of flex around. They're really thin metal, so you want to make sure you get good coverage. But about to stamp that down, bolt it up, and then again, this side's done. All right, cylinder head is on. Last thing I showed you guys was assembling the bottom. We got the head gasket on. I got the ARP studs in. You didn't miss much as far as videoing. You literally thread them in, set the head gasket on, set the head on. We just now pulled the cams out. I'm going to torque these ARP studs. We got the owner right here as well, Caden. Well, look at that head. Machine Shop did a great job.